Jennifer Hawk Petit was born in 1958. After college, she pursued a career in pediatric nursing, dedicating her days to caring for children. It was at the hospital where she met Dr. William Petit, born in 1956 in Canada. William would go on to become one of the most respected physicians in his field. The two shared a deep bond and were married on April 13, 1985. Together, they built not only a home but a life grounded in family, compassion, and service. In 1989, they welcomed their first child, Haley, a bright and driven young girl. A year later, their second daughter, Michaela, was born. The family settled into a beautiful home in the peaceful town of Cheshire, Connecticut. Their lives were filled with school events, family dinners, and weekend sports. By the summer of 2007, Haley was 17. She was athletic, ambitious, and preparing to start college that fall. Michaela, age 11, was curious, cheerful, and full of energy. She loved cooking, music, and was excited about entering middle school. Life was calm, safe, and full of promise. On July 22, 2007, it seemed like just another ordinary Sunday. Michaela had decided to cook dinner for the family and asked her mom to take her to the local grocery store for ingredients. Surveillance footage from the store later showed the two calmly walking the aisles, picking up items from their shopping list. But what the cameras also captured was unsettling. A man named Joshua Komisarjevsky watching them closely from the parking lot and then following them inside. Jennifer and Michaela had no idea they were being watched. To them, it was a normal day. That night, while the Petit family slept peacefully, everything changed in an instant. Haley and Michaela were suddenly awakened by two intruders, Joshua Komisarjevsky and his accomplice, Stephen Hayes. The men quickly took control of the house. Jennifer, Haley, and Michaela were restrained, tied at the wrists and ankles to their beds. Meanwhile, the intruders began searching the home, looking for cash, jewelry, or anything of value. But their frustration grew when they realized there wasn't nearly as much wealth inside the house as they had expected. Still, they were convinced that a family like the Petties must have money somewhere, likely in a bank account. So they decided to wait until morning, knowing that William Petit typically left for work early. The intruders forced Jennifer to call the hospital and say that her husband was sick and wouldn't be coming in. Jennifer hoped the staff might sense that something was wrong, maybe hear something unusual in her voice, but that hope faded fast. The hospital staff simply wished William a speedy recovery and hung up, while Joshua stayed behind to guard the family. Stephen drove to a nearby gas station, filled 2 large containers with fuel, and returned to pick up Jennifer. He then drove her to the local bank, demanding she withdraw $15,000 in cash. Jennifer was warned not to say a word. The threat was clear: if she told anyone what was happening, her daughters, still at home, would be in immediate danger. Despite being overwhelmed with fear, Jennifer managed to stay composed as she walked into the bank and requested to withdraw $15,000 in cash, because the amount exceeded the daily withdrawal limit. The bank teller, Geneva, asked her to fill out a withdrawal request form. Seizing the moment, Jennifer quickly wrote a desperate note on the form, explaining that her family was in danger. 2 intruders were in their home, threatening them and demanding money. Geneva immediately sensed something was wrong and called the police. But after making the call, there was nothing more the staff could do. They watched silently as Jennifer left the bank and got into a car with a man wearing a hoodie. Instead of heading straight to the Petit home, police rushed to the bank, but by the time they arrived, Jennifer had already left just 2 minutes earlier. Jennifer held on to the hope that once the men received the money, they would leave her family unharmed. But sadly, that hope was misplaced. While Jennifer was at the bank with Stephen, back at the house, Joshua had already crossed a serious line, violating the safety and well-being of 11-year-old Michaela. When Stephen and Jennifer returned, he too committed an assault, this time against Jennifer, in the living room. The cruelty inside the Petit home escalated because the 2 men had already made up their minds about how this would end. Jennifer's cries for help only made things worse. Her screams woke William, who had been tied up in the basement. It's hard to imagine the pain and helplessness he felt at that moment. But despite being dazed and injured, William summoned all his strength, broke free, and ran to a neighbor's house to seek help. The neighbor William had run to wasted no time. They called the police immediately. In fact, by that point, law enforcement was already en route to the Petit home. But they didn't make it in time. By the time officers arrived, the two intruders had already poured gasoline around the house and set it on fire. The entire residence was engulfed in flames. Joshua and Stephen tried to make their getaway using the Petty's family car, but they didn't get far. Just moments after pulling out of the driveway, their vehicle collided with a police cruiser, and both men were apprehended at the scene. Firefighters were dispatched right away. But by the time they arrived, the damage had already been done. The house was burned down to its frame. According to investigators, when Stephen learned that William had managed to escape, panic set in. In that chaotic moment, he attacked Jennifer, ending her life. It didn't stop there. They then doused more gasoline in the house, including areas where the two girls were located, and set additional fires before fleeing. Both Haley and Michaela tragically passed away from smoke inhalation. Haley had tried to escape her bedroom. She made it to the hallway, but couldn't find a way out. Michaela was found in her room, still tied at the wrists to her bedpost. The cruelty of the scene was beyond words. William was rushed to the hospital and incredibly survived. But when he woke up, he had to face a devastating truth. In a single night, he had lost his entire family, his wife and both daughters, in 2011. Both Stephen Hayes and Joshua Komazarjevsky were sentenced to death. But just a year later, in 2012, the state of Connecticut officially abolished capital punishment. As a result, their sentences were commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The aftermath of the case sparked intense public criticism toward Connecticut's law enforcement. Many believed the police had not responded quickly enough to the distress signal from the bank. Some argued that had officers arrived just minutes earlier, lives could have been saved. However, the police maintained that they did everything they could and responded as quickly as possible. In the wake of the tragedy, the community came together to heal. On the grounds where the Petit home once stood, local residents built a beautiful memorial garden. They planted flowers, favorites of Jennifer, Haley, and Michaela, as a way to honor and remember them. For William, the road to healing was long and painful. It took years for him to begin moving forward after the darkest night of his life. But rather than let the tragedy define him, he chose to continue living. He chose strength, and he allowed himself the chance to find joy again. In 2012, 5 years after the tragedy, William remarried. His new wife, Christine, brought new light into his life, and together, they had a son. Still, William has shared that he will never ever forget his first wife and 2 daughters. But instead of dwelling on the sorrow, he chooses to hold on to the beautiful memories. The laughter, the love, the moments that made life with Jennifer, Haley, and Michaela so incredibly special. They will always be a part of him and forever remembered.